Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and I want to help you decide if you should upgrade from the iPhone 10 to the XS or the XS Max. Now, as you can see, these look like they're the same phone, and pretty much from a physical standpoint they are. Now, there's not really a way to tell the difference if you have both in hand. Maybe there's slight color differences here, but really they look identical in the hand. Now, there are a slight change to the camera lens when you put it in a case. You really can't tell that in person, and honestly they feel and look identical, with one exception. Actually, the build quality on the iPhone 10 feels a little bit better to me, and this is true across not only the XS but the XS Max. On the iPhone 10, these edges are very seamless. You can't feel any lips or anything at all. There's just nothing as far as the metal. You can't feel it, and it just really feels like one solid piece all the way around. There's maybe a tiny little lip right there, but it's almost hardly noticeable, especially if you had a case on it. Now, if you pick this one up, this is a little bit different. While it's not built cheaply or anything, you can definitely feel sharper edges right here on the metal. The metal's sharper right here on the front and on the sides, so it's definitely noticeable. The same is true for the XS Max. In fact, it's worse on the XS Max on this model. I can feel a really sharp edge right here. Others have told me the same thing. The same goes with the front. So there's definitely a slight build difference. I don't know if it was just cheaper to build that way, or I'm not really sure, but the 10 feels a little bit more premium, and they don't offer it anymore, so you've got that going for you, especially if you don't use it with a case and you're using it with a skin or something like that. Now, the next thing is the display. All three of these have beautiful displays. They're all HDR displays. They look great. They're super retina, and I don't think you're going to notice the difference between them. People with really good vision will probably notice a slight difference on the newer ones, and all of them look pretty good. You can see there's actually a slight difference between these two displays. They're all OLED displays. There's a slight difference, but you can only see that on a white screen. Now, before I bring up a pure white background, let me show you that True Tone is off, Night Shift is off, and they're all sort of set at the same brightness. Maybe this one could come up a little bit. There we go. Bring this one up a little. You get the idea. You can already see the difference in the whites. So let me go back here. We'll go to the photo album. So you can see as I've zoomed in, there's definitely a color difference between the three. In fact, these two look more similar. This one's a little bit different. And supposedly LG is making some of these displays, and people have complained of off-axis blue shift. However, that's normal for any OLED display, Samsung's, LG's, and everything. So here's the XS Max. You can see there is an off-axis blue shift. It's definitely there, and it's there on all OLEDs. It just depends on how much. So here's the XS. You can see there's the off-axis blue shift and the iPhone 10. So it's there on all of them, and I think you'll find that on any iPhone. Some are worse than others. In fact, the Pixel 2 XL was considered one of the worst, although I compared it in a different video to a Samsung, and it didn't seem as bad as people were making it out to be. So it's not really noticeable in person unless you've really got it off axis, but that's true of any OLED you're going to pick up. But just note, there is a difference, and you'll see that. Now, of course, with the older iPhone 10, there's a slightly different processor, an A11 Bionic, which is slower than the newer one. However, in everyday use, you don't really notice the difference. Things like going to a web page and scrolling, you're never really going to see anything with scrolling. And then if you're opening apps, you probably won't see too much either. Let me see if we can go here and open a similar app. Let's open Nlight on both of these. It hasn't been opened on either of these devices. And you'll see we get the same notifications. They're loading at the same speed, and everything's super fast. We'll just hit let's start, and we're in. So nothing's slow here, and you're not going to see any slowdowns as far as that go. In fact, when you're playing something like a game, those speeds are really quick as well, but I don't do a whole lot of gaming on either of these. But There is one difference where I think some people have noticed a difference. That's with LTE speeds. Some people are saying it's better on the older devices because there's some weird issues going on with software on the newer ones. Although I'm not experiencing that, and I get faster speeds usually on the newer devices. It just depends what one we're talking about, and then Wi-Fi speeds as well. So if we go to something like speed test, I'll just run this really quickly. And these are all on Wi-Fi, but I have gigabit Wi-Fi, so it should be able to handle it. And I know they're close to each other. It's not an ideal test, but I think you'll get the idea. That's kind of wonky with this one. We'll run it again, though. Now, I've run this test before and had over 300. I should be able to get up to 1,000, but usually on Wi-Fi we don't see that. But you'll see there is a difference there between all three of them. Okay, that one's finished. Let me hit this one here and hit go. Now notice between these two, there we go. We've got a little bit more speed over here. Let me move it away. See if we get any less interference. There we go. It's a little bit better. I do have more bandwidth than that, so it shouldn't be that low, but that's fine. I'm not that far from my wireless base station either. So it's pretty good, but you'll see this was better in this case. So let's run this older iPhone again. And we're getting a little bit better speeds on the iPhone 10. So it just depends on the scenario and all sorts of factors. But I don't know that you're going to notice the difference with the older one to the new one. You may or may not, but some people have had a worse experience on the new one. So let's close that. And the other thing with this is the speakers on the new one are definitely better. There's a wider stereo sound, as Apple calls it, because this speaker is boosted in its sound. So it sounds more stereo and it sounds more enveloping when you're watching a video. So other than that, that's the major difference of the speakers. It's hard to show on the video, but there is definitely a difference between the two. They're both great that way, but these are much better and louder as well. Now when it comes to the cameras on the iPhone 10 and 10s are very different. The 10s is definitely better. In fact, it ranks as the #2 camera right now, depending on who you ask, of course, just behind the Huawei P20, I believe. But the cameras are definitely different. Let me take the same photo here. And we'll open it up. And you'll see here, they don't look terribly different, but there's definitely more detail in the one on the right, which is the 10s Max. So there's definitely a difference between them, and this, especially in video, there is a huge difference. These are incredible video cameras. So the camera's a little bit better. I don't know that it's worth spending your money to upgrade on that. Now the last thing that's a little bit different here is the battery. The battery is actually smaller in the 10s Max, but it gets about 30 minutes or so better battery life. In my tests, I found that to be true, and in the 10s Max, I'm getting an hour to an hour and a half better battery life than I did on the 10. So there is a slight difference there. It is better, at least for me, and I think most people will see that difference, but it's not a huge difference, especially when you're considering this is much bigger and a much bigger battery. So it's not something I ever really thought about. They all have wireless charging. Technically, they charge a little bit faster wirelessly. I never complained about it here. They don't have true fast charging like some other Android phones do that are much, much faster. But you're talking about 2 to 2.5 hours of fast charging it to bring it up to full battery. The first 30 minutes will bring it up to 50%, and that's fine. But between all three of these, honestly, if you have an iPhone 10, I recommend to everyone right now, don't bother upgrading. If you have an iPhone 8 Plus and you love that screen and you don't care that there's less bezel and more screen, don't upgrade to the 10s and 10s Max. The 10 to the 10s, you're not going to notice a difference. There's probably almost no task that you could do that you would notice a difference other than if you have to have that other camera. Otherwise, you're not really going to be able to tell. Of course, you're going to notice the bigger screen size of the 10s Max, but other than that, there's really nothing. Face ID is supposedly a little bit faster, and I can show you that here with these devices, but let's just turn them on like this, and you'll see it unlocked a little bit quicker. It's not that big of a deal to me personally. Now, in that time, it was much slower, but usually it's about the same. And that time, this one won. So it just depends. You'll see, and they're closer. So it's really hit or miss with these. That one didn't work that time. We'll unlock it that time. But you'll see it's really hit or miss sometimes with Face ID, and I don't think it's worth the upgrade for those reasons. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Hopefully that helps you decide whether or not you want to upgrade. You're not going to be foolish to upgrade because you can probably sell this one for close to what you paid for it, and they don't make it anymore, so it's hard to get, and people want it because of some issues there's been going on with the new devices with Wi-Fi, LTE, and some other issues, but those will be fixed in software later on. I think for the most part, people would be happy with any of these devices and they work well. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'll link the wallpapers as I always do. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe and like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.